All right, let's get into it. When you hear the words language study, what usually pops into your head? Probably conjugating verbs, memorizing vocab lists, right? But what if I told you there's a whole field out there that treats language less like a school subject and more like a tool for solving some of the most fascinating and complex problems in the real world? That, my friends, is the surprising science of applied linguistics. So let's just start with a wild question. What if a misplaced comma, a strange word choice, or even just the rhythm of a sentence could be the key to cracking a police case? Yeah, it sounds like something straight out of a detective novel, but believe it or not, it's a very real application of what we're talking about today. So what is applied linguistics, really? Let's pull back the curtain and see how it's out there solving language puzzles in pretty much every corner of our lives.
At its heart, this is the best and simplest way to put it. Applied linguistics takes everything we know about how language is built, how our brains manage to learn it, and how we actually use it, day to day, and it applies all that knowledge to fix a problem or hit a specific goal. Basically, it's language with a mission.
And that mission is, wow, it's incredibly broad. I mean, of course, it's huge in language teaching, but it also helps design therapies for folks with speech disorders, or untangle that dense legal jargon to make contracts understandable for everyone. And yep, it can even unmask the person who wrote an anonymous ransom note.
Okay, now let's talk about the one word that tends to make people just a little bit nervous: grammar. For centuries, our whole idea of grammar has been shaped by a very specific and honestly often misleading set of rules. Applied linguistics helps us see the reality hiding behind those rules.
Take this classic rule. This was actually introduced way back in 1762 by a bishop named Robert Loth. He just kind of decided that English grammar should be more like Latin. The problem with that? English isn't Latin, not even close. This is a perfect example of someone prescribing a rule instead of describing how people actually speak.
And this really highlights the crucial difference. On the one hand, you've got proscriptive grammar. That's the rule book of do's and don'ts we all got in school. But descriptive grammar, well, that's what linguists are actually interested in. It's a scientific process, really. You observe and map out how language truly works out in the wild without judging it as good or bad.
So the big takeaway here is that modern grammar isn't just about a list of rules. It's a dynamic system with three parts that all have to work together. You've got the form, that's how you actually build the sentence. You've got the meaning, what the sentence signifies. And then there's use, knowing the right time and the right place to say it. You need all three to really be a competent speaker.
So with this new way of looking at things, how did it completely transform the way we teach and learn languages? Well, let's take a quick walk through the last century or so to see how much things have evolved. We started way back with grammar translation, which was basically just analyzing old literary texts. Then came the direct method, which tried to copy how kids learn their first language. So, no translation allowed. During World War II, you had the Army method, using intense drills to get soldiers fluent, fast. And all of that evolution led us to where we are today with the communicative approach. Here, the main goal isn't perfect grammar, it's just about clear and effective communication.
Okay, so we're shifting gears now. We're moving from the classroom to the cutting edge of criminology and technology. This is where applied linguistics starts to sound like something out of a sci-fi movie.
First up, forensic linguistics. This is literally where language experts become detectives. What they do is use statistical analysis of word choice, sentence structure, all the little ticks in our writing to figure out who wrote an anonymous note. And get this, in one incredible case, a linguistic analysis proved that a police transcript of a suspect's confession was so different from his normal speech patterns that it cast serious doubt on the evidence and ultimately helped to pardon a convicted murderer.
So how in the world do they pull off that kind of analysis? Well, a lot of the time it's with the help of a field called corpus linguistics.
This is pretty much big data for language. By analyzing these massive databases, called corpora, of real-world text and speech, we can uncover patterns that are totally invisible to the naked eye. We've learned that our language is full of these predictable little chunks, that spoken grammar is wildly different from written grammar, and we've learned which words we actually use the most, versus the ones we just think we use.
So we've looked at all these different puzzle pieces, right? We have grammar, teaching, forensics, big data. How do they all fit together to give us the whole picture? Well, there's this wonderful analogy from a classic Indian fable that explains it perfectly. It's the story of the 5 blind men and the elephant.
So in this story, language is the elephant, this massive, complex creature. And each specialized field in applied linguistics is like one of the men, studying just one part. The grammarian feels the solid leg. The discourse analyst feels the flexible trunk. The sociolinguist feels the broad ear. The thing is, none of them are wrong, but none of them have the full picture on their own. It's only by putting all of their unique perspectives together that we can even start to understand the whole magnificent animal.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. As we're developing these incredibly sophisticated AIs that can mimic our speech, studying what makes human language so messy, so creative, and so deeply personal, it becomes more important than ever. It's not just a system of rules, it's a window into how we think, how we connect, and ultimately who we are. So what can it teach us about ourselves? Now that's a puzzle worth solving.